Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is at last 7 o'clock. So welcome to this evening's meeting of the Planning Committee of Woking Borough Council on 13th of September. I'm Councillor David Cornish and I will chair the meeting. The Planning Committee consists of 9 elected borough councillors supported by a variety of professional officers. This is not a political meeting but a quasi-judicial committee which forms part of the planning process. As such, it has formal procedures which must be adhered to. Firstly, the planning officer will present the application and then only those speakers who have registered to speak will be invited to address the committee. There is a strict time limit of 3 minutes. I repeat that, 3 minutes per category of speaker. Those being town and parish councils, objectors, supporters, and those borough members affected by the application. Members of the committee are more impressed by the quality of what you say rather than how long you speak for, but above all, please do stay within your time limit. Everyone has had an opportunity to comment on each application through the consultation process, and no one else, including borough councillors, town and parish councillors, agents, applicants, objectors or supporters, are permitted to address the committee, ask questions or in any other way disrupt the meeting. Following the speakers on each application, members of the committee will discuss and debate each application and seek clarification from the council's professional planning officers in order to reach a decision. The decision reached by the committee may or may not agree with that recommended by the presiding case officer. It is important to understand that the committee can only determine the actual planning applications presented before it, using current national and local planning policies and relevant decisions of the relevant planning inspectorate. We cannot consider whether or not they're a good idea, whether they are needed, whether they are too costly, whether there are alternative uses of the site or more suitable use of land elsewhere, or whether or not they are popular. Unfortunately, none of these issues are considered as material planning considerations that can form the basis of our decisions. Finally, this is a hybrid meeting with committee members present in the room, while some officers are attending the meeting in person and some connecting via Microsoft Teams. The meeting is also being live streamed on YouTube. If you are joining us remotely, please ensure that your camera is switched on only when you are speaking and that your microphone is unmuted only when you are speaking. Thank you. Callum, do we have any apologies for absence for tonight's meeting?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting held on 9th of August 2023. Michael?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've just got one slight amendment to it. Under item 18, line 4, my name's got the H missing from it. That's all. Quite important. Yeah.
Any other comments or amendments about the accuracy of the minutes? No? Okay, then given the correction proposed by Michael, can I propose that the minutes of the meeting are accepted? Thank you, and seconded by Wayne. Do we have any declarations of interest concerning this evening's items? I've got Al and I've got Andrew. Al?
Well, just on item 27, application 231869, Maiden Early School. Just to say that I'm on the Early Town Council Planning Committee, but I wasn't present at the meeting where this was discussed. So.
Andrew?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This also pertains to application 231869. I'd like it noted that I am chair of the Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which does have responsibilities within the realm of school place provision. However, I approach this application with an open mind and will listen to all the representations this evening before forming a view. Thank you.
Thank you both. Agenda item 26. Do we have any applications deferred or withdrawn? We have none. Thank you. In that case, we'll move directly to item 27, application 231869, Maiden Early School. I'll hand over to the officer responsible.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just share my screen for the presentation.
Can everybody see that? Thank you. So this is application number 2318694 for Maiden Early School, Silverdale Road in Early, and it's a full application for the proposed change of use of a building to educational use, including internal and external alteration, and it's part retrospective. The site is obviously located in a major development location in Early. It's an existing building within the grounds of Maiden Early School and surrounded by school buildings and playing fields. This is an aerial view of the application site. As you can see, it is surrounded by playing fields and the existing school buildings. And there are also residential properties in the wider area at Sevenoaks Road, Avalon Road and the Crescent. This is the proposed floor plan for the building. It will consist of classrooms, communal areas, staff rooms, cloakrooms, sensory rooms, and WCs. This is the proposed elevations. So the proposed external works include the installation of 2 new windows, front doors. The external facade of the building has been rendered and the existing roof has been replaced. This is a site photograph. So as I'd mentioned, it is already part retrospective. So at the time of the visit, you can see that the building has been rendered and the roof has been replaced. And this is the view at the rear of the building. Subject to the conditions set out in the officer report and update to the supplementary agenda, the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you. Do any comments or questions from any members of the committee? Andrew?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Baldeep, for your report. I believe that the report identifies many merits to this application. The only query which I had when reading through the documents pack related to the installation of a new gas boiler. I note that in the supplementary agenda, partly, I guess, in response to a comment from Early Town Council received on the 6th of September, that the officers are suggesting that a condition could be attached if this application was approved, requiring the demonstration of the building achieving compliance with BREEAM Excellent standard. And the wording I see at the top of the second page in the supplementary agenda would seem to me to be would seem to fulfill that that concern that I had. So at the moment, I would be minded to support this application with that condition.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, following on from Councillor Mickleborough's comments, I'm very familiar with that building. I spent many a year in there, many years ago. But knowing how badly built that building was, and assume it's a lot better now, it was not exactly the warmest of buildings during the winter. In fact, it's pretty cold. So going on the gas boiler side of things, I would presume now that it is insulated to an acceptable standard, because it certainly wasn't 50 odd years ago.
Part of the internal works does include insulation. And as far as I'm aware, as the report states, there is a building control application that will assess these things. And at the time of writing, it was pending a decision. Unfortunately, I haven't received an update, so I'm assuming it's still pending a decision. So there is a building control application to assess stuff like the insulation and the installation of the gas boiler.
Yeah, perhaps just following on, it would be, it'd be good if the committee could see a copy of that report when it's available. Can't see any problem, because I mean, out of interest, because I think it's highly important.
Yeah, I don't think there's a problem. It depends if the school uses the local authority building control service and whether you were able. I think the school would have no problem providing that, but I also believe that irrespective of what occurs here with planning, to accommodate children in a classroom needs to meet certain building reg standards anyway. For Department for Education, it's not. It's something very separate from planning, and I'm sure the school and or the agent should be able to provide us with the building control report. But whether that contains all the information you're after, I'm not entirely sure. So we can, but
I think just wait and see, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think it'd be interesting just to see going forward with other buildings like this, with other schools. It could be useful.
Thank you. Rochelle?
Just wondering if there's any asbestos in the building or rack concrete?
I have to admit, not to my knowledge. I haven't been provided with that information. No, I think that would still be a building control matter.
Any further questions? Apologies.
I think there's probably not a planning thing, but just to note that this is the second community facility that's lost to the people of Maiden Early, given that the library was shut there in 2018, and now the community centre is a loss to the community of Early, although it's a gain for the special needs pupils. So, but these facilities haven't been replaced in Maiden Early.
Okay, any further comment from anyone? In that case, it looks to me like we should move or propose to accept the Officer recommendation, subject to the suggested condition relating to BREEAM rating. Someone like to propose we accept it?
Is this statement been, who's produced this statement? The statement on this supplementary update agenda. Who's produced this statement that the post development certificate shall be prepared by a suitably qualified assessor? Who produced that? Next page, Brian.
That's a standard BREEAM energy efficiency condition that we would use on all buildings, non-residential buildings.
And the applicant's happy with that, is it? Considering this is part retrospective and a lot of the work has been done.
The wording of the condition is within 3 months of the occupation of the building. Yeah,
I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
That's the easy bit.
I mean, it's part retrospective, so it wouldn't have been a pre-commencement condition needing the applicant's approval in that sense.
Right, so that really then it can't apply.
Well, if members agree they want that condition, then
All I'm saying is I think achieving that is very difficult, considering this is part retrospective. They've already done the roof, and to get BREEAM excellence, you're going to need a fair bit of insulation up there to achieve that. So all I'm saying, I'm not saying it's wrong to put it in there. I'm just saying I think it would be very, very difficult. If most of that work, as per the drawings you've shown us, has been done, I think it's going to be difficult to achieve. But you're the experts. I know it'd be difficult to achieve, but from a planning perspective.
That's thank you, Wayne. That's a very good point, and I think it may be advisable to delegate to officers to confirm with the applicant whether that condition is able to be achieved in the current wording and whether there is a more appropriate compromise. We do have to be aware that we impose and have imposed at this committee almost identical conditions or similar conditions at St Crispin's and other schools that have had historic parts of the building renovated, refurbed and so on.
I absolutely get that, Brian. But if you're doing something from scratch, it's dead easy. But when you're doing something and you're changing the odd window here, changing the roof there, blah, 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 and you're not changing the fabric of the building, it becomes exceptionally difficult to achieve excellence.
I think Wayne makes an excellent point. However, dodging, I mean, I'm sure the council wouldn't think of such a trick, but dodging around the standards for BREEAM by bringing retrospective applications rather than thinking about it in advance isn't the way to achieve an improvement in building standards and building performance. So I'd be happy to say we put this condition in with a delegated responsibility to the officer.
Yeah.
As you suggested. But I know Wayne's very correct point.
One thing I would just add, Chair, is that building regulations, the SAT ratings for current buildings are very, very, very close now to our BREEAM condition, bearing in mind that our local plan, as councillors will be aware, doesn't have the most up-to-date energy efficiency requirements. So it is a bit of a race, whether it's building regs, whether it's this condition, BREEAM, or it's our local plan. Normally, it's whatever development is proposed or converted, it's normally pulled up to current standards, but we can, if members are happy, to delegate to officers to find out what is agreeable and required.
So with that in mind, and with therefore the inclusion of that condition, would someone like to propose that we accept the application? Al, thank you. Someone a second? Bill, thank you very much. The application is approved. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I'm being previous. All those in favour? Anybody against? Thank you. I was assured by a senior planning officer here that democracy had nothing to do with planning, so I do apologise. Right, we shall move on to application number 231148, land at Mole Road, Cindersham, Berkshire. And I will ask again the officer to, which is Tariq Bailey Briggs, to present first, and then we'll move to two speakers, which are Mr. Gareth Jones and Councillor Gary Cowan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just going to load up my presentation now. Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is application 231148, land at Mole Road in Berkshire, and it's a full retrospective application for the creation of a vehicular access, including the erection of a boundary wall features and gates. The application site is part of an agricultural field situated north of Ellis Hill and is bordered by Mole Road to the west and to the south by an unclassified road, Ellis Hill. The wider plot is known as Newlands, was recently subdivided, and the land itself has come under new ownership. A dedicated access, boundary wall and gate is therefore required in order to provide the landowner with access to this independent parcel of land. So here is an aerial image of the site, so you can see where the access, boundary wall and gate would be highlighted in red. It is important to note that a substantial amount or portion of the gate and boundary wall could be allowed under permitted development rights, specifically under Class A Part 2, which would fall under minor operations. The elements which require planning permission are highlighted in red, which is the top portion of this gate over here and the side of this wall. The gates are 20 centimetres higher than what is acceptable under permitted development rights, and a small segment of the boundary wall will exceed 1 metre, being directly adjacent to a road. This represents a valid fallback position in this instance, which is a relevant material consideration. It is recognised that the appearance of the boundary wall and gate are not typical of a traditional agricultural operation or access to a field. However, this development would have a limited visual harm on the area, as it's simple in design, modest in size, set well back from the main road, being Mole Road, and is largely screened from view by vegetation, which is visible in this photo here. The development does not result in a visually prominent or incongruous form of development. Consequently, it is of the view of the officers that the local character would not be unduly altered, and the scheme is therefore considered to be acceptable. The proposals would be acceptable in principle, and no harm is identified regarding impact on neighbouring amenity or highway issues. There would be no adverse impact on on trees and landscape, subject to conditions, being condition 2, which is a scheme for landscaping. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'd now like to ask Mr. Gareth Jones, who I believe is the agent, to address the committee. He's online. Mr. Jones, if you can hear me, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening. The application seeks to provide an access including associated gates and fencing onto Ellis's Hill. The entrance itself is required in order to provide access to the subdivided site following acquisition by the applicant. The nature of the use remains agricultural and therefore accords with the wider countryside principles of the locality, a view shared by the officer. The development itself consists of a boundary wall features and gates. It is important to note that a fallback position exists whereby the vast majority of the scheme could be carried out under permitted development at the lower height. I appreciate Councillor Cowan's concerns in regard to the effect of the proposal on the character of the area and welcome the opportunity to discuss this with you this evening. In regards to the character, the development is considered to be of high quality and utilises a simple design consisting a brick and timber material palette, which is in keeping with the wider design language of the surrounding area. It is important to bear in mind the fallback position, whereby permitted development would allow for a similar style development to come forward with no limitation in terms of materials. During the course of the application, discussions took place with the officer surrounding a landscaping condition to further soften the visual effects of the development and respect the rural locality. The Highways Officer has assessed the application and concluded that the gates are considered to be sufficiently set back from Ellis's Hill, enabling vehicles to pull clear of the road, turn within the site, and therefore not either impact the highway or the adjacent public right-of-way. This is considered a betterment compared to the existing accesses located further along Ellis's Hill in terms of visibility and space. I would like to conclude by thanking officers for their hard work throughout the determination process and thank them for the report today. I hope the committee is reassured by these comments. The proposed scheme is considered to be of an appropriate countryside development and the existing agricultural site and the existing character of the agricultural site. I therefore request that you support your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, thank you very much indeed, and thank you especially for keeping well within the time limit. I now ask Councillor Gary Cowan, who's the ward member for Arborfield, to address the committee. And Gary, you also have just 3 minutes.
Thank you. The case officer on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear, Gary. Okay,
the case officer on page 37, paragraph 14, uses the wording vernacular, and vernacular means a similar and typical style of structure in the local vicinity. He adds that there are several examples of brick-built boundary walls and timber gates and fences which front Mole Road, which are in keeping with the general vernacular of the area. And to be quite honest, this is a misleading falsehood, as it's absolutely not true. There is only one single example of this on Mole Road, and that is a Grade 2 listed farmhouse built in the 17th century, so it's over 200 years old. Comparing a Grade 2 listed building on this retrospective planning application is really worse than misleading, as it's not in the vernacular as he states. Although planning applications are judged on the merit, planning approvals do set precedents. Woking Borough Council's Statement of Community Involvement Consultation Document, page 18, paragraph 7.6 states, a material consideration is a matter that should be taken into account when deciding a planning application. Material considerations can include, but are not limited to, it then lists 14 items, of which one of them is previous planning decisions. Woking Borough Council Planning Department therefore do recognise that planning decisions are material considerations. To improve this a damaging precedent will be set for any future development or planning application on any field or any form of development anywhere within the borough. Precedent will also be set that recognises part permitted development as a material consideration. Any similar future planning applications, if refused, would fail at appeal and a cost awards will be made against the council. These are not desirable outcomes in the current financial climate. The case officer himself recognises that the boundary wall and gate do have a suburban appearance, and this development is not typical of a traditional agricultural operation or access to a field. He also adds that it deviates from the conventional characteristics of a traditional agricultural use, which are normally modest in scale and design. The council's tree and landscape officer rightly was of the view that the proposed boundary wall and gate is out of character in the countryside location, and planting a few replacement trees on the side of the Mole Road does not solve that concern. I would actually ask the planning committee to refuse this planning application if they want to guard against setting unnecessary precedents, as our countryside needs as much protection as we can afford it. Thank you.
Harry, thank you very much indeed for your presentation and for sticking to time. Do any members of the committee have any questions or comments, please? Wayne?
I've got quite a few. Can I just ask, were the three plans that were produced, the three plans in the pack, was that all that we were given to page 37, the drawing, the point you made, Tarek, about the height exceeding by 20 centimetres and the height that exceeds 1 metre adjacent to the highway, the section in red that is like a sloping section that takes you from the brickwork. Because in the drawings, sorry, in the actual photographs, it shows that the wall hasn't finished. So there's no capping on it or anything. And I just don't understand how we've got the measurements to achieve the diagram in page 37, because we've not been given those dimensions. Where are the dimensions for this application?
So yeah, that's all the information that was submitted by the agent was provided. Dimensions are taken from the elevations of the boundary wall and the gate. That is the gate plan elevation. So that would be that drawing.
The drawing on page 43.
Yeah.
So you scaled that off. You scaled that off, did you?
So I used that plan to base my measurements off.
To create your measurements for page 37.
Yeah.
So then my question is, how do we know where this brickwork's going to finish? Because it's not finished in the drawings, and it's not finished as in the I can't tell by the drawings. And if you look at the pictures, it would indicate that it's not complete. So what is going to be the overall height of that brick wall?
The overall height is what would be on those, what it should match those elevational drawings essentially. So side boundary will be 1 meter high, going up to 2 meters, and then the gate being 2.2 meters high.
All right, so I'm not being pedantic here, but I don't know how you're getting that. So if you could just bear with me. So on there, how are you getting the height of that brick wall?
So by measuring the front elevational drawing.
So you're just measuring that bit there and assuming that in your pictures, which hasn't been finished, that is the finished height.
So yeah, on site I measured the brick wall as well, which matched
Yeah, but it's not finished. Brick wall isn't finished.
As in the side
Well,
portion.
if that's your cast next to that brick wall,
Yeah,
that brick wall's not finished.
but the front elevation is supposed to be, or is the proposed final drawing of what it would be.
Yeah, it's not finished. Yeah.
If I just come in on to endorse exactly what Wayne has been saying, I actually went and visited the site myself earlier this week and was about to make exactly the same point, that you've got a half-built wall. And my concern would be, I think, exactly the same as Wayne's, which is if we approve the application, what are we actually approving in terms of the finished wall? Because there are no dimensions given other than the fact that the part of the wall currently exceeds 1 metre adjacent to the highway. There's nothing to say that when the wall is finished, it couldn't be 3 metres high. We've got nothing to measure against in terms of future enforcement, should there be any material breach.
I agree. And I think if this hadn't have been a retrospective application, we might be more sympathetic to the very, I think, inadequate drawings that we've got here. And I think you've done a great job, Tarek, almost doing the applicant's job for them in producing the measurements.
I've got some more points to make myself, but Andrew, you first. I
Yeah,
think,
yes.
Wayne, did you have further points to make as well?
Yeah, just on this point, very important point. Am I correct in saying that under permitted developments, the 2 arms that we see coming out from the gate could be up to 2 metres in height? Is that correct? And if so, that points to Wayne and David's concern. I think all of our concerns, that we don't actually know, potentially what this wall might end up looking like.
Well, I agree, but that's why I was trying to get, Tarek. Have you got information that we can't see? Because I can't scale off I can scale off drawings. I can't just get it. And this is adjacent to a highway, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct.
Can I just jump in there with the discussions over retrospective and the proposed plans, or the intended plans, the existing plans? That drawing that you're looking at page 43, that is, as far as the council and officers are concerned, scaling off-site and with what we have in front of us on plan form, that is what permission is being sought for. So the height of the plans in front of you is what is on site. So this is a replication. This is replicating in plan form what has been constructed. Now, it may not be finished to a standard that we around this table may consider finished, but permission is sought for a wall at that height. If we here tonight approve these plans and the wall changes in any way, which means a new planning application is required, then naturally the council has the opportunity to consider whether it's harmful. If, for example, we approve what's in front of us here tonight and a brick course is removed in 5 years' time and it is lower, it does not require permission, we will never see it. Likewise, if further means of enclosure are erected in and around it away from the highway, which are permitted under permitted development, we again will not see it. So again, what we've got in front of us is a representation of what's on site. Now, as officers have kind of made clear in the report and as members have said, the wall may not be typically characteristic of what you would find, whether you would construct it differently or whether you would expect it to have a top brick course or something like that is not necessarily relevant to the accuracy of the plans. As long as the height and dimensions are there, the council need to consider what's in front of it.
Brian, thank you. So if I can just come back to my own comments and the observations I made on the site. I mean, clearly it's a large gate, but it is a gateway and the entrance in front of us is all that we're considering. I don't know under what form of agriculture can be categorised what's happening behind the gate. There's an awful lot of hardcore on brickwork, and I've never seen a field of bricks being planted like that before, but that is not the subject of this evening's meeting either, and that should some change of use of the land be obvious in the future, I'm sure the applicant and the landowners are very well aware of the council's interest in this land, and will therefore be wise to submit the appropriate planning application as and when they dip some change of use. So I also, having travelled Mole Road and then up and down Ellis Road, the Ellis Road as well, a couple of times, it's difficult to see it as being particularly overbearing, certainly for the main road from Mole Road. Ellis Road it is far more obvious, but then there are other brick structures in front of houses less than 100 yards further up Ellis Road as well. So in many ways, I don't see it as being that abnormal. There are structures like this in many rural locations across my ward, my part of the borough. So I would be minded, or would have been minded, to approve this if, to echo Councillor Smith's point, we had something precise to approve, because I can approve the gates, they're there, we can see what they are. It's in excess of 20 centimetres over permitted development. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But the red bit of brick wall, if that wall is built out, the fact that it's unfinished, I agree it's immaterial, but clearly some more construction is likely to take place. And I don't know what we're judging against, because there are no measurements of that wall that we're approving. And I'm not quite sure at what point we could bring it back and say this has been a breach of planning permission if we don't know what permission we're giving.
I have the greatest of sympathy. I don't think I would have let this get through the gate until I had seen all of the dimensions. And I think you've done a great job of helping them. But I just think, looking at what's in front of us, it's very disingenuous, the drawings. They could have easily put the line here. I mean, what you've gone on, you've basically just taken this drawing here. You've just taken that and you've just assumed that that is the same height throughout the structure of that wall. That's what I presume based on what you've told me, which I think that's a lot of work for somebody to go fishing for something that's coming in front of the planning committee. As it was retrospective, I would have expected more of this agent.
I've got Rochelle, and anybody else wish to speak? And then Tony. Rochelle.
Development allow the height of the wall on the other parts. Will it be the same height as the gates? Will it be the same height? What is permitted development for the officers?
So the boundary wall, so the wings essentially of the structure, yeah, so the two dividing edges, that go up to 1 meter high. And then the gate itself, subject not to being adjacent to a highway, which is not considered to be, can go up to 2 meters. So the only portion of this scheme being the gate that's exceeding 2 meters is a small portion of the top. So approximately 20 centimeters of the gate is outside of permitted development, effectively.
The unfinished wall right now, how high is that?
So the boundary wall doesn't exceed 1 meter up until the point highlighted on red, which I showed in my presentation.
Tony?
Yeah, I just had another point to make. I take the points that really the things that you were talking about, David. I just wonder why you need to put this on an agricultural field, and the worry is that there's some intention to do some sort of change of use and development beyond that. I know that's should be outside any agreement that this agreement, but I wonder, is it necessary or worthwhile putting some sort of condition on that there won't be a change of land use there?
Tony, I don't think we can do that. A change of land use would come under a separate planning application. I mean, I sympathise with what you're saying. They clearly aren't going to be planting fields of corn anytime soon behind that gate, in my unprofessional opinion. But that would be a separate planning application. We can't presuppose what they may be intending. But if we come back to the vexed question of the wall, if we had some dimensions attached to that red area that you've highlighted there, Tariq, next to the column. And I don't know what that might be, but if we could define how far along the wall that red area extended, and we attached a condition to say that no part of the wall beyond that red zone would exceed 1 metre in height, I could live with that. Whether that is without more detailed plans in front of us, it's very difficult. But whether we said that is no more than 1 metre out from where the pillar of the gates, should any part of the wall exceed 1 metre, I don't know. But we need to have some kind of definition of what we're actually trying to approve.
Thank you, Chair. That's not something that officers would be recommending members do, purely for the circumstance that members would not be able, or the council would not be able to design out or condition what requires planning permission in its own right. So as Councillor suggested a second ago, conditioning the use of land is not something we can necessarily do when it's not part of this application and require permission in its own right. Likewise, up to the thresholds allowed by permitted development, the council cannot restrict if the development changes. What we have in front of us, and what I've just, as members were discussing, I've just looked through the submitted plans, and obviously they're A4, but on an A3 they're scalable, and they're scalable on our system. Permission is sought retrospectively for these dimensions. They tally up on site. Now, in terms of the demarcation between what is 2 metres, what is 1 metre, and what transitions between the two heights, that is marked on this plan, and you will see very faintly on the ground floor plan, the top part of page 43, you will see a demarcation line between where the pillars are, which we know the height of, or we can scale from the bottom drawing, and the wall as it decreases in size to the point where it is below 1 metre. Now, up to that point, if the wall is, for example, 3 inches below 1 metre, and an additional brick course was put on it to finish the wall, that is still permitted development. But again, the developer, the applicant, should be fully aware of the risk they're taking if they start to alter and play tunes with what is there on site. What we have in front of us is that proposal. We can scale from it. And ultimately, that is what the permission will restrict the development to. And that's as far as officers can really advise.
So for clarity on that, Brian, you're referring to the solid on the plans on page 43, coming to the right of the actual gateway on each boundary wall. Yep. There's a solid black line. Yep. And we're saying that is the bottom point of that curved area.
Yep. And then there's
therefore
1 metre onwards.
The rest of that going out towards the end of the walls must be below 1 metre.
Yep. As scaled off there.
As scaled off there.
But it shows the height.
I will
at the bottom.
Shows the height at the bottom.
So it is not customary to mark up all dimensions on a scale drawing because there's too many dimensions to mark up. So it's not, that's why we have scale drawings, so we don't need to specifically mark out every dimension, especially when it's not imperfect or as a wavy line as you've got in front of you.
This is a matter of record for the meeting. There's nothing to say that everything to the left of those two solid lines is 1 metre. I mean, I take your explanation, I hear it, and we can record it in the minutes of the meeting, but there's nothing on the plans in front of us that confirms that in black and white, dare I say.
It's a very small point that either one of these is wrong, but the actual scale shown on page 37 shows up 1 to 100. It's not. It's a drawing. It shouldn't actually be on page 37 scaled to 1 to 100. It's wrong. That shouldn't be there. It's a diagram. Yeah, it's a diagram, and it's not. If you try and scale that off and compare it to page 43, no way is it 1 to 100. Just as a point, but it shouldn't actually have that scale on page 37.
Oh yeah. Yeah, sorry. That scale was just for illustration purposes. So it's literally just to highlight what parts of the scheme were acceptable under PD and what parts require planning permission. But that scale, by no means, on page 48, accurately reflects the dimensions of the building. It's all in the plans. It's where I've got my measurements from.
Do any members of the other members have any further comment? Therefore, we probably discussed this gate in some considerable detail. We now need to come to a decision. So we first need someone to propose that we approve this application. Does anyone wish to propose an amendment? We can, can't we? So anyone wish to propose that we accept this application? Anybody? Andrew is proposing that we accept.
With great reluctance, but I don't see reasons in planning law why we can refuse it. I would also like to know, yes, with great reluctance, I do propose that we accept this application because I don't see any reasons in planning law for refusal. I would also like it noted for the minutes that this that I believe that all members of the committee are concerned that this is a retrospective application and that the works here, including removal of vegetation, I understand, have been at a very advanced stage. But I am prepared to propose acceptance.
I'm prepared to equally reluctantly to second the acceptance. I echo Andrew's points about the nature of it being a retrospective application. And I'd also like to note that we are, as we've all mentioned, clearly deficient in detail, and that on future applications like this, we would expect the sort of information that gives us some solidity in our decision making. But with that caveat, I'm prepared to second that we accept the application. Therefore, can I ask a call of hands, all those prepared to accept the application? I note that as being 5, if my math is correct. I ask for a show of hands for those who object to the application. 5. And any abstentions? I don't think there are any. Therefore, by 5 votes to 4, the application is approved. Thank you. I think that with one small item concludes the meeting this evening. But the one but very small item is to note that this is Callum Wareham's last meeting of the planning committee. I'm sure he'll miss us, but I'm sure we're going to miss him a great deal more. Callum, can I say, speaking as a new chair, I found your help and support over the last few months absolutely invaluable. I'm certain that goes for all of my predecessors in this role as well. I wish you well in Wandsworth. I could say I wish you luck, but you're going to need more than luck. But seriously, congratulations on your appointment. Thank you for all you've done to this committee. And I'd like to propose a vote of thanks to Callum on behalf of the committee for all that he's done. That's for a show of hands. We close that. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. On that slightly sad note, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.